Hey everybody, it has finally happened, as you can see by the huge smile on my face. I have been waiting for this day all season long. The Edmonton Oilers have fired Peter Chiarelli. This has been a long time coming for the Oilers. Chiarelli, he's a terrible GM. I don't understand how this guy has had a job in the NHL for so long. As a Bruins fan, I watched him just ruin the Boston Bruins at the end of his tenure there. He's done almost nothing with the Edmonton Oilers. He's completely wasting the early years of Connor McDavid, and the Oilers have finally had enough. He is out. He's gone. And quite honestly, this should have happened sooner. But it's very good news for the Oilers now that he's finally gone. I mean, just look at some of the moves he's made, even just this season. They don't make any sense. He's just an awful GM. Their goaltending is extremely inconsistent. They have no defense. There's almost no secondary scoring on the team. They're completely reliant on McDavid for offense. His moves this year have been trading for borderline top 6 defensemen, 7th and 8th defensemen, guys like Alex Petrovic and Brandon Manning. That's what you're doing to shake the team up or to try and save the season. I mean, he's traded Jordan Eberle for nothing. Now, this isn't this year. This is over his time in Edmonton. He's traded Jordan Eberle for basically nothing. He traded Taylor Hall for an overrated, lousy defenseman. He's given McDavid no chance at a Stanley Cup for the first few years of his career. McDavid is consistently a 100-point player every year, yet the team absolutely stinks. They've made the playoffs once. They went to the second round, and then last year was an absolute disaster, and this year is turning out to be just as big of a disaster. They signed Cam Talbot to be their starting goaltender. Cam Talbot proves that he cannot be their starting goaltender. Well, he had the year that they went to the playoffs, he had a tremendous season. Last year he was terrible. This year he hasn't been good. They signed Mikko, so now they placed their bets on Mikko Koskinen being their starting goaltender. They signed him to a 3-year contract at $4.5 million per year. He's a 30-year-old rookie in the NHL who spent his entire career, almost his entire career, in Europe prior to this. He comes over to the NHL. He's played like 30 career games, and they're giving him a big contract and basically making him the starting goaltender. Edmonton is just an absolute disaster at this point, and a lot of it has to do with Peter Chiarelli. How you have been able to waste the talent of Connor McDavid. I mean, this is a team that should not only be a consistent playoff team, this is a team that should be competing for Stanley Cups. And they're not even a playoff team. They are outside the playoffs looking in, and they're probably not going to make the playoffs this year. They've been playing like absolute garbage of late. This has just been such a long time coming with Chiarelli. I've watched in person what he was doing in Boston. I'm like right in my home team, my home area. Watch what he did to the Boston Bruins, and he can't draft worth anything. His contract, he gives huge contracts to undeserving players. I mean, this is what he did in Boston that really screwed the Bruins. Was he consistently gave way too much money to bottom 6 role players who were nice guys to have on your team and heart and soul type guys, but not nearly worth the money they were getting. And then they didn't produce anymore, and all of a sudden you have $3-4 million locked up in a guy who should be making $1.5 million. And he consistently did that with the Bruins. And eventually the Bruins got into huge cap trouble, and they had to, they fired him and had to do a quick 3-year rebuild in Boston, and kind of undo a lot of the damage that Chiarelli did. Now in Edmonton, a few summers ago, he gave Milan Lucic a huge $6 million per year contract. That contract is now one of, if not the worst contract in the entire NHL. Lucic scores like 2 goals a year now. Absolute garbage. I mean, I don't understand how Chiarelli, even got the job in Edmonton, and certainly how he kept it for so long, given what he did. In Boston, he trades away Tyler Seguin for basically nothing, a bag of pucks, basically. Complete garbage in return for a young superstar in the league. And now he goes to Edmonton, and he trades away Taylor Hall. He trades away Jordan Eberle. There were talks about him trading away Ryan Nugent-Hopkins this year. Luckily, he didn't pull the trigger on that. It's just idiotic that this guy even had a job. And if any team hires him to be their GM again, I mean, they deserve to be a last place team. This guy is trash. He's an awful GM. His drafting's atrocious as well. When he was in Boston, I mean, there were so many more huge misses on draft picks than hits. And we'll see how some of these guys in Edmonton turn out, but it's starting to look like there might be some big misses in Edmonton as well. You look at Connor McDavid. Connor McDavid, by the time his career is done, is going to be one of the greatest NHL players to ever play the game. He is, without a doubt, the best player in the league right now. This is a guy who can, over the next 10 plus years, is going to be a 100-point guy every single season in the NHL, assuming he stays healthy. And you have the most dynamic, best player in the league, and you aren't even a playoff team? Are you kidding me? It's just ridiculous. Edmonton's defense is trash. He's tried to fix that with Brandon Manning and Alex Petrovic this year. Did he go and try and make a big move for like an Alex Pietrangelo or someone like that who would be a real game changer and difference maker? No. He trades for 7th defenseman and thinks that that's going to make a difference. Secondary scoring has been a huge issue over the past 2 years for this team. Has he done anything to improve their secondary scoring? Not really, no. And it's a problem once again this year. They're completely reliant on their top players for their scoring. He completely overpaid for Leon Draisaitl. As much as I like Draisaitl and think he's a really good player, look at the contract that David Pastrnak signed in Boston versus the contract that Leon Draisaitl signed in Edmonton. He drastically overpaid for Draisaitl. This is a team that is paying Draisaitl a ton of money, is paying Connor McDavid over $12 million per year. They're a team that's going to be in cap trouble, and they're not even good. Generally, if you're spending up to the cap, you're a playoff team, and you're spending that much money because you're going deep into the playoffs and trying to win a Stanley Cup. Edmonton's not even good, and they're in cap trouble. It's just, I don't even know where to. I could go on and on and on about how terrible of a GM Peter Chiarelli is. This guy continues to trade away top talent and get minimal returns for them. He continues to be a poor drafter. He continues to take teams that should be good and make them bad. And he's done it with Edmonton. He did it at the end of his time in Boston. And the biggest reason he got the job in Edmonton is because he did win a Stanley Cup in Boston. But that Stanley Cup was not really Peter Chiarelli's Stanley Cup. Tim Thomas is the only reason that the Bruins won the Stanley Cup in 2011. He carried that team through the entire season and through the entire playoffs on his back and was absolutely unreal in the playoffs. If you remember, 2011, Boston was 1 goal away from being out in the first round. All Montreal had to do was score an overtime goal in Game 7, and Boston is out in the first round. And Peter Chiarelli doesn't win a Stanley Cup. Boston doesn't win a Stanley Cup. And Peter Chiarelli probably is thought of a lot less than what he was after he got fired by Boston, because he would not have been a Stanley Cup winning GM. But no, Nathan Horton scores the game-winning goal in Game 7 of the first round against Montreal. Boston goes on. They beat Philly. They beat Tampa. And they go on to beat Vancouver and win the Stanley Cup. And all of a sudden, Peter Chiarelli is now a Stanley Cup winning general manager. Mostly because of Tim Thomas's ridiculous play and some incredibly clutch goals by the Bruins that really made that team what it was and turned that team into a cup winner. And then again in 2013, when the Bruins went to the Cup again, they were down 4-1 in the third period to Toronto in Game 7 at home. They were going to be out in the first round again. And it took a miraculous comeback led by the Bruins' best players, Bergeron, Marchand, Lucic, Sagan, Chara. Those were their best players at the time, and they led a miraculous third period comeback to end up winning that game in overtime and win Game 7 against Toronto. And then they went on and went all the way to the final and lost to Chicago. But again, Peter Chiarelli got extremely lucky with those teams in how clutch those teams were. And that's the only reason those teams went to the Stanley Cup Finals. They could have easily been out in the first round in both of those years that Boston went to the finals. They were one goal away from being out in the first round both years. And then what would we think of Peter Chiarelli then? Had both of those teams gone out in the first round? He would be a consistently bad drafter, a guy who makes terrible trades, and a guy whose teams never go deep into the playoffs. He probably wouldn't have gotten the job in Edmonton without those two Stanley Cup Finals appearances and one win. But he did. He got the job in Edmonton, and he's continued to ruin that team. That's a team that should have been easily built into a powerhouse in the Western Conference, and he's been completely unable to do it. So I am so happy for Oilers fans that he's been fired. You may finally get a decent team on the ice next year. It's going to take a little bit of work. You're going to have to, I don't know if you eat the Lucic contract or if you try and find a trade partner and hope that someone will take it if you retain a bunch of salary. I don't know what's going on. But the next steps for the Oilers have got to be finding a top 4 defenseman, shoring up the goaltending situation, which now is going to be a lot harder with Koskinen signed for the next 3 years at $4.5 million. He's your starter now, so you pretty much have to go with him now, unless you're going to pay a backup goalie $4.5 million a year. That will kill you cap-wise. They've got to move the Lucic contract or do something with that, but now the proper steps can be taken to make the Oilers a good team, which they should be, and stop wasting Connor McDavid, because he is the best talent in the NHL right now. He is the next superstar, great, not generational. He is the next generational player. He is the current generational player in the NHL. Obviously Crosby is, but I think of Crosby as more of the mid-2000s through mid-2010s, and now Crosby's getting a little older. But again, this next generation, the next guy for the next 10 to 15 years is Connor McDavid. Edmonton cannot waste him. They've already wasted too many years with him. They've got to get this turned around. So whoever the next GM is, we'll have to wait and see who they pick. But he needs to do a much better job than Chiarelli did. They need to fix the defense. They need consistent goaltending, and they need to find secondary scoring. That's a lot. That's a lot to fix. But you have Connor McDavid. You cannot waste that. So there's my thoughts on Chiarelli getting fired by Edmonton. It's been a long time coming, and I am so happy that it finally happened. I think Peter Chiarelli is a garbage GM, and he's ruined 2 teams that should have been cup contenders. First, he ruined Boston. That now he's ruined Edmonton. It's time to move on from him. If another team gives him a job as their GM, then they deserve what they're gonna get, and that's overpaying gritty bottom 6 heart and soul players, trading away young talent, and being unable to build any sort of a winner, because that's what you get with Peter Chiarelli. So there's my 2 cents on that. Let me know what you think down in the comment section below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. Check out offthewallhockey.com. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.